So I wanted you to see how the segments value different smart grid benefits. And I've listed here some of the benefits that we read. We just summarized it here. Obviously, we read something more detailed than this to the people. But we also asked them, what would you be willing to pay for? Just so we could tease out whether or not someone is interested in something. We asked them 3 questions. Are you interested in this? Yes or no. If you're interested in this, are you interested enough to pay more for it? Yes or no. So we could try to find out, because it's easy to say what you would like, but it adds another level of barrier to say you would pay for it. So you'll see under Easy Street, Do It Yourself and Save, and others, Concerned Greens, they're all interested in new kinds of rate plans or limiting the need to invest in new power plants or preventing outages. Now for traditionals, they are interested in outages. That was something that came across. Really, that was another surprise of mine, was how high that was in all of the segments in terms of importance. But important and willing to pay for, that's where traditionals came in even. And then the time of use and peak time rebate programs did appeal to 3 of the consumer segments, really 4 of them, but 3 of them pretty high. Consumers liked time of use because they liked that it was consistent. They felt like they knew in advance when the rates would be high and when they wouldn't be, and that they could do, it would be easy to manage in terms of deciding what they would and wouldn't do in terms of using energy at the inexpensive times or the expensive times. And then, of course, peak time rebate is typically more appealing. It was more appealing to all the segments than time of use, simply because there's no downside. Basically, if a consumer does nothing, the bill is the same. But if they shift load, then they save money. So that's very appealing. And, there's been a lot of debate about this issue. Do consumers want variable rate pricing? Is it going to confuse them? Will they get hurt? And as a result, there's a lot of capability here that's not being used. And so what we wanted to do was document the fact that consumers are interested in this. And our research has a statistically significant confidence interval. The confidence interval is 95%, so it's quite high. That we got this right, that we talked to consumers, we listened to them, and they really do have an interest in these programs. And then I wanted to show you just a little bit more detail here on the likelihood to participate critical peak rebate. As I said a minute ago, they all are pretty high, and you can see the second bar, the second line where it says total would participate, those bars you can see they're pretty high on they definitely would, they probably would, they might or might not, you add them all up, and then total would, you'll see they're all pretty high except for the traditionals, which remain quite low. And then the time of use pricing, 3 of the segments were pretty high. Do It Yourself and Saved, Concerned Greens was very high, and Young America over half for both of those, and then traditionals not at all. And Easy Street were also not interested because it didn't sound easy to them, it didn't sound automated, and they didn't need to save money. So again, this is a good example of how a utility or a regulator or a consultant could look at this data and help design programs that would appeal very specifically to the majority of a utility's customer base. And then one thing I wanted to point out here at the end is that we read them a series of positive and negative statements, as I said, and of the ones who heard about it, we asked them immediately what was their viewpoint on favorability. And for the ones who had never heard of the terms, we described what they meant. We conducted the full survey that I just showed you, and there was more too that I didn't show you, I didn't have time to. And then we re-asked this question at the end. What is your opinion of the smart grid now? Are you favorable or are you unfavorable? And just to reiterate, we did give them the negative statements, that it would cost too much, that it's really just for the utility, that it won't benefit you at all. And we didn't just bias them with a bunch of positive things. We gave them a balanced viewpoint. And even with those positive and negative, the favorability went up, as you see, quite a bit. And what the implications are for this is that consumers want to be educated, and when they're educated, they're interested in these concepts and they're interested in having their utility move forward. And we have data on that as well. So I'll just leave you here. These last 2 slides, this one and the next one, when you download the deck, you'll be able to access these URLs in blue at the bottom. I can't show you videos on a webinar, but we do have these consumers on camera, and it's one thing for you to hear me tell you what people have said to us, but it's another thing for you to see the person yourself, see their body language, their word choice. It's really illuminating. Some of this is for members only, unfortunately. That's because the release forms we got from the people indicated they were willing to be recorded on camera for conferences and for purposes of research, but they did not want it on the internet or open to the public. So when that was the case, we did it for members only. We did have a subset of interviewees that were willing to let themselves be seen on the internet. That top one where it says number 5, that's our 10 themes, our top 10 things people want from the smart grid. We're able to open that up to the public. So I'm happy for you to see that. The URL is kind of long there, and then the last one, Fact or Fiction, that's a myth-busting video that we just released a few weeks ago, which tries to address some of the misinformation that's being spread by some of the minority opposition groups. And I'd love for you to look at that and actually forward that out to your own network so we get it widely viewed. These two are both open to the public.
Thank you. So you're listening to Breakthrough Techniques for Engaging Today's Electric Power Customers. I'm Jesse Berst, the founder and chief analyst at SmartGridNews. And we've just heard from Patty Durand, who's the executive director of the Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative, and she's been describing today's customer realities. And Patty, I want to start with a couple quick ones. First one is from Paul, who asked if you've done any segmentation for commercial and industrial customers, for business users.
Not right now. We've really focused on the residential market just because that has been such a mystery. And the larger businesses have already been approached by utilities. Many of them already have time of use and demand response pricing plans and customized pricing plans. But it's really been the U.S. residential consumer that's been neglected, so that's where we've started. As we grow, I hope we can expand into small, medium business, but we're just not there yet.
Calvin wants to know if you guys will share your segmentation methodology.
We will, yes, absolutely. We will not share some of the details because they're for our members, and our members have paid for this study with their dues, but we do have a top-line set of findings. For our members, we have an actionable segmentation framework where they can take a set of questions and apply it to their own surveys and then easily and affordably segment their consumer database. But for non-members, we do have the top-level findings.
And at the very last slide in this webinar will be contact names for all of us. So if you want to reach out to Patty directly, you'll have a chance then. So I got a number of questions that are related to the similar thing. One of them is from Steve and another from Ryan, but there were several others along a similar theme, which is people say they will do and what they actually do are different, right? So if you survey them about what they watch on TV, they say PBS, and if you actually measure it, it turns out to be Kim Kardashian, right? So, and so what about this, and is there any evidence from pilots about how people respond in reality? So there's a lot of questions about what's happening in reality and why aren't more people taking advantage of energy management?
Well, those are all good questions, and you're right. That's why we asked the question, would you be willing to pay for $3 or $4 more a month, so we could put a number around the question. And numbers dropped in our study. The numbers of people saying yes dropped. So we know there's some reality there. But certainly somebody could say, yes, I would pay more, and then wouldn't pay more. A lot of that goes into the program design. How attractive is it when it actually gets rolled out to a consumer? What are the benefits the consumer sees for themselves? And to answer the question about pilots, we have seen quite a few very successful pilots that confirms this study. People are enrolled in time of use programs and demand response programs. The surveys are very high in terms of satisfaction and retention. So the question I have is, why aren't more consumers being offered these programs so that we can prove out both this survey and the pilots? And I think there are a lot of regulatory and policy issues around that we can address. But we're listening to consumers, asking them questions, and the pilots back us up.
Paul from France makes a comment, and it relates to several questions that were on a similar theme. He mentions in France that smart meters are seen only in the media when it's about cost and privacy issues. In other words, only kind of in negative terms. And a number of people ask questions around how can we do a better job of getting consumers on our side. And others pointed out that we've been that many utilities have been engaging and messaging out to their customers for decades, and yet we still have this low level of awareness. So I guess the general question is, how can we do a better job of getting our customers and our service territory on our side?
There's another study I did not present today called Excellence in Consumer Engagement, and in that study we've shown what drives program enrollment, and it includes creating programs that interest consumers according to their values, so a little bit along the segmentation line here, but then also partnering with community groups to get the message out. So it's not just the utility saying it, it's also the local religious group, the local Optimist Club, the local environmental group at festivals and fairs, and the Smart Grid Consumer Collaborative. We're here to help with that. We haven't done enough yet in education, and part of that is because we're young and we spent our first 2 years focusing on understanding the consumer by listening to them by these research projects. And we plan to expand into education next year with a consumer-facing website, another video besides the myth-busting one that we've already done, fact sheets, a blog spot, Q&A on the website, and a social media campaign. But this is going to be a heavy lift. It'll be a long-term project, and it will take a lot of collaboration together.
One more real quick one, Patty, and I got a number of questions kind of related to this. Your research, you said, so in certain segments are interested in time of use pricing or peak time rebates, but why aren't variable or dynamic pricing plans more prevalent in real life?
Yep. I mean, I have my theories. I think they're not more prevalent because they're not necessarily approved by regulators, who often want every consumer to be offered the exact same price. There's a level of fear around that consumers will be hurt, and it's difficult to manage the expectations and understand the reality. And then also, I think that we're just now getting to the point where there's enough digital meters so that variable rate pricing can be offered. In terms of time of use, of course, you can do that without a digital meter, but then it gets into the utility's willingness to do it, and will they find it profitable? And in some cases it's structural. You know, the way that utilities make money is gating some of this change.
Well, thank you, Patty, very much. And Patty is going to stick around. We're going to have another couple of other Q&A sessions, so she'll have a chance to jump in if she's got additional things to add.